Hello and welcome to our second special webcast in partnership with Ealing Council. Today on digital transformations of businesses in the borough. My expert panel today are Zav Anderson, who's Digital Skills Director at ClockworkCity, Yogesh Gopal, Managing Director of Everglade Windows, Anup Jadhav, Salesforce Technical Architect at Predictive Insight, John Martin of John Martin's Estates, and Carol Sam, Business Growth and Inward Investment Manager at Ealing Council. On the programme, we will first take a quick look at the economic context. Then we'll hear how Ealing Council has been through its own digital transformation in recent years and the work that's underway to invest in more superfast broadband infrastructure in the local area. Next, we'll turn to businesses and technical experts to hear how businesses can build their online profile and marketing through social media, improve customer relationship management through so-called CRM systems, and finally, we'll hear how to improve enterprise resource planning through ERP systems. Throughout the programme, my colleague Pim will be monitoring your questions. So if that sounds quite heavy, don't be shy in asking us the basics, and please keep those questions coming in. So let's get down to business. My first guest this morning is Carol Sam from Ealing Council. Morning, Carol. It's wonderful to have you on the programme today. I think Morning. Now, I think you're going to start just by giving us a bit of a flavour of the current economic context, because whilst we're going to do a deep dive into digital tech this morning, we can't ignore, of course, the landscape that surrounds us. So I think Joel in our AV office is going to bring up on screen a bit of data which you're going to talk us through, Carol. Over to you.
Yes. Morning, Andrew. I thought we've heard so much about the economic impact of COVID to our economy, and to put it in context, of course, Ealing is not immune to these impacts, and I thought it was important to highlight some of the vulnerabilities to Ealing on the basis of the nature and the type of sectors prevalent in our borough. So current research data by Oxford Economics highlighted that GVA will be close to minus 17% and will not resume to normal figures by 2022. And in terms of Ealing and West London, some of the sectors and the nature of our businesses are such that we are quite significantly impacted by COVID. So our wholesale and retail trade is the largest share of what providing workplace jobs at 16%, and manufacturing accounts for more than 1 in 10 workplace jobs. So more than half the total job cuts will come in the 3 sectors, which are some of the highest sectors in terms of Ealing. And we're looking at accommodation and food services, wholesale and retail, and manufacturing. And we also have a really large share of micro businesses. Over 93% of those are micro businesses in Ealing, and many of those are in construction, wholesale and retail, and they are at the greatest risk of failure. And whilst they were once a strength, it also presents the impact of how these SMEs are so vulnerable to the impact of COVID.
And I think alongside that, of course, we've got that sort of macro challenge of the local economy's links to Heathrow, where I think you've got some more sort of headline sort of stats to share with us.
Yeah.
So Heathrow is a significant employer to Ealing. It employs over 75,000 airport-related jobs, will be lost in Ealing, Hounslow and Hillingdon. And it's a huge risk to our local economy. And the dominance of Heathrow factor in Ealing means that as an aviation community, we will be hard hit by decline in aviation at Heathrow. And a lot of those job losses will hit the most vulnerable, as they are concentrated in sectors which are more likely to employ lower skilled, lower paid workers, and a significant number of those workers are in areas of Southall, given its close proximity. So a huge impact to local communities. So to summarise in terms of the economics context, while Ealing as a borough isn't immune like other areas of the country, but the sectors and the areas are critical in terms of the type and nature of businesses and reliance. So I think it's so important that in order for us to get a good bounce back, to be resilient, digital transformation and use of digital technology across the board is so important.
And we got a good flavour, Carol, on our last episode of how high streets are changing up at a pace. We're going to hear later in this programme how businesses off Ealing's high streets are starting to adapt at great speed to digital. But I suppose this is also about being as competitive as possible, which as we head towards Brexit later in the year is going to be front of many people's minds, I think.
Absolutely. I'm not sure if you've got the slide up, Andrew, but in terms of, we've got some recent data which shows that in terms of the proportion of enterprise adopting digital technologies when compared to our European partners, particularly in terms of the use of social media, we had in 2013 in the UK it was 40%, and rose quite sharply in 2019 to 68%, which was ahead of the EU 28 in 2013 and 51% in 2019. So it shows that we're on the right track. There's still a lot more to do.
And I think, Carol, we'll hear a little bit later in the programme about how you deliver that in practice from Zav and John. I think your data also gives us a flavour of the sort of take-up of CRM systems in the UK. What does that look like?
Well, so what we're looking at in the operational side of CRM, that's just the core data. In 2017, it was approximately 31% in the UK, just behind the EU 28 average of 32%. And the CRM analytical, which is using the data in terms of analysing it and being able to be more targeted, again in 2017, the UK was 21% neck and neck with the EU 28. So whilst it's getting there is quite a lot more to go. And
I suppose we have to remind ourselves 21%. That's sort of effectively 1 in 5 businesses starting to take up CRM. So lots of distance to travel. And then the final area that we're going to be focusing on today's programme is ERP, so enterprise resource planning systems. And what did the data look like there, Carol?
So not as good, 90% adoption of ERP by UK businesses in 2017, actually lagging behind the EU average of 24%. So whilst the figures aren't daunting, it does reveal that we do have a long way to go. And I think in light of COVID and post-COVID recovery, it's all more critical for us to ensure that our businesses are being able to have information and adopt the right technology, which we'll be able to hear soon from some of our case studies.
And ERP, I suppose, particularly challenging, as we'll hear shortly, in terms of perhaps some of the complexities of implementation. But finally, I think you've got a bit of data for us around the proportion of enterprises using cloud computing services more generally. Do you want to talk us through those numbers?
So what we've got in proportion of enterprise using cloud computing in the UK, 2014, it was 24%, and versus 42% in 2018. So a significant increase, and it's ahead of the EU average 28 of 19% in 2014 versus 26% in 2018. So we're ahead of the game.
And almost really, you could say, accelerating away from our EU peers in that broader use of cloud computing. I mean, I think it's going to be fascinating to look at this data again in a few months' time and see the impact that COVID-19 has had. Now, I'm going to ask you to perhaps give us a flavour of what this digital transformation journey has been like for Ealing Council as an institution, because this is something that you've been working on for a number of years, if I remember rightly.
Absolutely. So internally, I think the council has a digital programme like many boroughs, and I think it had begun pre-COVID in terms of moving a lot of our services online. But much of the rationale for this was in terms of cost savings, future-proofing, and looking at efficiency in delivering our services. And I think what COVID has presented is the urgency and speed in terms of now moving our services online, both from a customer-facing in terms of our local businesses and residents being able, and local community being able to access information, but also from point of view of more staff working from home and what that entails in terms of having access to the information and being able to work remotely to deliver our services. So the program involved just a channel shift, so looking at cost-effective channels to delivering our services, reducing avoidable contact, and I think that's probably more prevalent now in the current new normal, automating activity, and looking at actually how we collate and use our data to become more targeted, transforming our processes, and much of that has been accelerated post-COVID. And through that, we can achieve economies of scale by consolidating our activities across a number of departments, and ultimately, again, reducing our running costs. So the process has started.
And can I ask you, as an officer, obviously, and user of all these sort of new IT tools that have been sort of appearing within the council over the past few years, what's it felt like? Has it been entirely pain free?
No, definitely not. Nothing with IT transformation is pain free. It's had its teething moments, but I think we are learning by doing and improving. But in light of this new normal and the requirement to work from home, it can be quite challenging at times, and I think we have got a lot of way to go to making it a smooth transition. But I think the focus now, actually, if this is the new normal, then a lot more energy and resources will be put into this in terms of making it a transition.
And I think we've got a few sort of short summary of the benefits for the council, and these investments always do need to be sort of benefits driven. Do you want to pick out a few of the highlights? Yeah.
I'll just quickly run through that. As I said, initially it was probably motivated by cost savings, future proofing, and efficiency, but I think one of the key things, we are able to use the data to effectively target our services. We want to improve the customer experience. We can track their inquiry online and then again respond more targeted. We've got stuff like improved fraud prevention, and I think that's quite important these days. But also the opportunity to increase income generation and influence customer demand. So again, I think in terms of efficiency, cost saving, and future proofing has all become that more prevalent in the context of post-COVID and the new normal.
Thank you, Carol. So you've given us a flavour of the burning platform created by the stresses on our economy at this time, and the sort of general direction of travel being a positive one for UK businesses in starting to adopt all of these technologies more. Ealing Council is clearly so walking the talk yourselves. But I know from many conversations that we've had over the years and conversations with local businesses that a lack of broadband capacity and super fast broadband has been a huge frustration and has been holding many businesses back. Now, to address that, understand that Ealing with other councils are working on a programme called Fibre West. Do you want to talk us through the content of that programme and what that's going to mean locally?
Yeah. Well, we hope this will mean some real positive things for Ealing and the West London economy. Each borough, and Ealing is one of the recipients of 925k allocated through SIP1 funding. And what this means is that we are able then to use TfL stations, so connecting fibre, high-speed fibre from our stations and connect them to public buildings. And by doing so, we are able to target and prioritise the areas with poor fibre connectivity. And so the fibre will be laid from the stations to the public buildings, and it will enable businesses and residents along the route to be able to connect and benefit from faster services. And I think in the current context of how communities have been impacted and reliant on fibre in terms of both healthcare, having to work from home, homeschooling, it's critical. We don't know if another wave hopefully wouldn't come, but again, it shows the importance of having real good connection. So it's being delivered with our TfL concessionaire, and we hope that the improved outcomes by this program will be able to mean better connectivity for a range of services. Businesses will be able to benefit from new connections, and they can use their cloud apps to drive productivity. It drives investment because often a lot of the private sector, private operators are reluctant to run fibre in certain areas because it's not viable to them. So by having a partnership with the public sector, we're able to open up a lot more commercial opportunities and provide investment in new fibre network.
And I suppose that your point there around, new connections enabling, the use of cloud apps, absolutely critical in terms of today's discussion, because there's no point in moving all of your IT into the cloud if you can't then have easy access to it. Thank you so much, Carol, for sort of setting the scene for us there. Zav, you've been in the thick of this for years, working nationwide, rolling your sleeves up, I think, on many of our high streets to talk one-to-one with independent businesses that are struggling with this transition. Can you start off perhaps just by giving us your take on why it's so important for businesses to invest in digital skills in the current climate?
Okay, so digital skills, it's not, I think digital skills and social media, not just social media, it's digital marketing as a whole, but dovetailing that with traditional marketing. So what you've got to think about everything you do with marketing, starting with your USP of your business, straight through to who your customers are, then out to what platforms you go out to. And you need to think about how you're going to be communicating with people. Social media is a conversation, and social media, we've got to remember, is not designed to help the micro businesses. It's not designed to help the small businesses. It's designed for people to communicate with each other. So what we've got to try and help the businesses to do, but through training, is to explain to them how we can leverage off social media, how we can leverage these things to help their businesses. Often we talk about killing small businesses, but what businesses have to do is to turn around and figure out how they can utilize this and make that work for them. What we've seen with COVID is as soon as lockdown happened, all the businesses were shut. 68% of businesses were virtually shut down overnight. And those who had no digital presence literally didn't know what to do. They couldn't communicate with their customers. They didn't know what to do. The problem was they had products still to sell, and the slightly cleverer ones who had a bit of a digital presence were able to then, we can deliver to you now, or you can still get in touch with us via our various social media platforms. So what happened with lockdown was a lot of people had nowhere to go. A lot of businesses had no, some successful. So it's this is the new normal we're in. But what we've got to think about is not just now where there's a big lockdown. If this happens again, let alone normal society, how people can benefit by using social media and digital tools. It's all about visibility. Every single business in Ealing, there's around about 16,000 micro businesses, which I think we mustn't forget about. Mustn't just think about SMEs. Think of the micro businesses, the retailers on the high streets and side streets. All of these people need visibility increased. They've all got customers out there, But the problem is often the customers just don't know they exist. So that's what we've got to think about, how we can use social media to increase the visibility of these businesses. So for me, that's one of the fundamental things we need to think about.
Now, I was really struck, Zav, looking at the data with Carol, that whilst we've clearly made good progress over the past few years, there still seems to be a remarkable number of businesses that perhaps haven't started using social media at all. What's your take on how businesses that haven't yet sort of dipped their toe in the water should sort of set out on this journey?
Okay, so the thing with social media, I mean, I think Carol was just saying that 68% of businesses are now using social media, which we all fist pump and we go, this is fantastic. The problem is I'm not sure, and from the evidence I see, necessarily using it in the correct manner for their business. Often most people, if they set up a business, certainly a micro business, a friend is going to say to them, look, you need to be on social media, you need to be selling on social media. So what these people do, they go, right, okay, let me set up a Facebook account, and there's someone to help the Facebook account up, and they go on Twitter or on Instagram or Pinterest, LinkedIn, etc. They get these vehicles ready for their business, and then they think, right, okay, what should I be posting? If they're not careful, what you often see on a lot of these social media is what you see on their website. I got this for sale, we sell this, here's a picture of something. And if you're not careful, it's just very dull. When it comes to digital marketing, you've got to think about three things. You've got to think about 3 E's. The first E is entertain. Every post you put on social media has to be, otherwise, why would the people who choose to follow you, why would they be following you? You've got to entertain them and interest them in what you're saying. The second thing you've got to do, the second E is educate. You've got to educate them about your business in a subtle way. You can do that through your or through the content of your posts as well. The third thing you've got to think about is your engagement. You've got to get some engagement. What do you want to try and achieve? What is the return on investment you're looking for the time for your training? Okay, so you're thinking about, what engagement do I want? Do I want them to follow me? Do I want them to like me, to retweet, to share, to go to my Shopify account, my Facebook shop, come into my physical shop? What is it we want to do? Yeah, we can use digital to drive footfall into the actual towns and cities once lockdown is lifted, etc., and there's no challenges there. So you've got to think about those things, entertain and engage. They're the sort of things about when you're trying to engage with businesses and let them know what you're talking about. The problem with the website, someone will get a website, and websites are great, and everyone needs a website. I agree with that, but I don't think you need to spend as much time on websites nowadays as a few years ago. People that visit a website, they'll check out what you've got. That's fantastic. The next day, they're unlikely to visit your website again and again and again. If they choose to follow you on social media, if you could encourage them to follow you on social media through your entertaining posts, there's a chance, as they look at their social media, which pretty much everyone does pretty much every day, there is a chance you will have visibility. It's all about visibility of the business is the key thing. So keeping that connection going with your customers. That's what we're thinking about. It's a bit like, people walking past your shop every single day, indeed to your shop every single day. You can achieve that through digital means. But the problem we have is digital tools, and the key thing is to demystify the whole social media and digital skills tool. There's a lot of training out. There's a lot of online training out there, but it can be really confusing. And certainly to the micro businesses, we're trying to run a business. There's so much to go out there. There's so many experts. That's confusing. What we need to do is just demystify. It's not difficult, and we just need to take people through it and get the businesses up and running and working effectively on social media. So that 68% is effectively using social media, not just I have a presence.
Some really useful advice there from Zav Anderson of ClockworkCity. I think the 3 E's, entertain, educate, engage, are going to stay with me. As we turn to John, who certainly isn't scared when it comes to social media. In fact, I'd say John is one of our most prolific sort of presences on West London social media. I wonder whether you can give us a bit of a flavour, John, of how you've been using social media to promote Pitshanger Lane and its independent traders. And I think we might bring up on screen some slides to illustrate as you talk us through.
Yeah, morning, Andrew. Look, my use of Twitter began in summer 2015 as one of the requirements of the elements of the Great British High Street competition, which as chairman of the Traders Association I decided we should enter. The Department of Communities and Local Government, as it was then, the DCLG, wanted to see how High Street could engage with its community, and that is when we as a business first started to use it. We made sure everybody knew about not only the competition and and especially the element of voting, but I also managed to get Peter Crouch, who grew up near the lane, to do a tweet using the necessary hashtags we had adopted for the competition, and that is still used now by the government as an example of the power of social media for any high street. It had the highest number of retweets of any tweet in the history of the competition, both then and since. So it shows the power. However, you don't win something as prestigious as the Great British High Street Award and not continue to promote it. And that's what I've done ever since, using my personal Twitter account as chair of the Traders Association. And in most recent years, I've also taken to Instagram for the same purpose.
Amazing. And what has the total impact been, would you say?
Yeah, well, the number of tweets using our hashtag, including the Peter Crouch one, certainly got us noticed, and the Department of Communities and Local Government praised us as follows. After a truly impressive campaign to galvanise the local vote, Pitshanger is a deserving winner. And its great social media campaign and commitment to supporting local traders, Pitshanger delighted our judges. That really says it all. However, it's the continued promotion which has kept the lane in people's minds and encouraged visits from far and wide. I mean, just to give you an example at the moment, Twitter being as I call it, the power of Twitter is phenomenal. I'm actually talking to a high street in Australia, and prior to lockdown, we were trying to get some dates where they potentially could come to London to come and see our high street. But that's just one power of it. So
there's an international conversation at work. What about your local residents and customers? I mean, do you find that your Twitter activity and social media features in conversations when folk come into your stores?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, the continual promotion, this isn't a one-hit wonder. Continual promotion is what it's all about. Look, Pitshanger Lane is what it is. It's a little independent high street with 50 plus independent traders. And, what's lovely is being a government appointed judge for the competition and having the experience now for the last, 3 years of going up and down the country judging other high streets. It's amazing that you pop into a high street to judge it on the day and they literally look at you and they go, "You're John Martin, aren't you, from #Pitshanger? We know all about you from social media." So, of course, there's promotion at a local level as well as international, but promotion at local level is key to the day-to-day activity, and it helps to add to any tweet for, most individual traders. It spreads a message. So, people are there, shops are there, and what they're doing.
And there are a whole host of different social media platforms that folk can choose from, from LinkedIn to Twitter to Facebook. What have you found as most successful and impactful for traders at Pitshanger?
I've got to be honest, I think I prefer Twitter to Facebook, provided it's used properly and positively, as should with all social media, really. Twitter has a wide range of ages. But it's business, more business focused. It's also great to get a simple, punchy message out. Instagram's a little bit more visual, allows a number of photographs with different groupings. And I think the audience with Instagram is younger than that of Twitter. I keep the message simple on any given day for all social media and make sure that there is a consistency with it.
Amazing. And would you say, I mean, you clearly put an awful lot of time into the social media profile of Pitshanger. Talking to other traders around you, is social media activity something that they need to consciously ring fence and protect time for?
Yeah, look, I think that there's there's a key element to it for businesses, isn't there? The thing is, look, keep it simple. And I think that's the reason why I prefer Twitter, and I think a lot of anyone else that we've encouraged to go on from Pitshanger Lane, but ensure that there is continuity and consistency. It's quite interesting. I missed the Saturday morning. As Andrew probably knows, I do a regular Saturday morning tweet, and I happened to just sort of be a bit late for one morning, and suddenly got a barrage of messages to check if I was all right. Was I unwell? Because suddenly my message didn't go out at sort of 8 or 8:15. But when you're doing when businesses are doing sort of tweets, make sure you tag people in as well, and don't be afraid to get people to ask people to retweet and comment. Many people schedule posts, but I've never done that. I sort of find that a way where people fail to engage, and it seems very much impersonal. But if you sort of take a bit of time and, set yourself a little program during the week, and don't be afraid to retweet posts. Just use the fine example this week has been, I've done week 3 of the Eat Out to Help Out scheme. But it's really just to remind people to take advantage of our Pitshanger restaurants, just in case someone missed the first or second one.
John, thank you so much. I'm going to bring in my colleague Pim now to find out whether we've had any questions sort of coming in by email from viewers. Pim.
I've got 2 questions come in, one for Zav and one for John. So firstly for Zav, do you think that paid for adverts on LinkedIn or Facebook are worth it for businesses to buy?
Okay, so paying for adverts can be effective, but what you've got to make sure you do before you do that is, personally, I would make sure you use all the free stuff that's out there available to you to use to promote your business. There's a lot you can do for free, from claiming your Google listing, etc., and community before you start paying. Before you start paying, what you've got to make sure is your message is right. So, for example, what you're saying the correct thing to be saying to the correct customers at the correct time on the correct medium? So until you've actually worked that one out, I wouldn't pay to promote any message until I was sure that was effective. So effectively what I'm saying is, if you know what your message is, you know what product you want to be promoting, you know who you're aiming this at, you know what sort of medium they're on, this by using a small amount of money, checking what the return on investment is, seeing if it's effective, seeing if it works. If it does, then replicate it slightly larger and keep checking it and making sure there is a return on investment for what you're doing. But before you pay for any adverts, there's a lot of free stuff you can do, which I would suggest try doing that first.
Zav, thank you so much. Pim, I think you had a second question this time for John.
Yes, so John, many businesses might not have resources for a dedicated social media person. How can they overcome this issue to ensure that they are still maximising their use of social media?
That's an interesting question, and given the current circumstances, I think the issue is that there's no doubt that businesses can all work together. One tweet could spread, across the world, and I think if businesses, particularly, I look at those with us on Pitshanger Lane, that if you tag in another business along our lane, they will retweet your tweet. So it is all about working together. So if you haven't got the resources, don't be afraid to speak to other people along your high street or within a small business at home. We're all out and about. We're all meeting people, albeit that in a slightly different way. But we're sending emails out. Don't be afraid to ask people. And I think the important factor here is if we get everybody helping everybody out, businesses will continue to survive. And I think it will help that particular business get their message out there.
John, thank you so much for that raft of insights on how you've been getting stuck into delivering social media campaigns on the ground. Now I'm going to turn to Anup, who's going to give us a flavour of what's involved for SMEs in getting organised with your customer relationship management systems. Welcome to the programme, Anup. Great to have you with us today. We've just heard from Zav and John about how to get to grips with social media. But as I was discussing with Carol earlier in the programme, we still see a relatively low take-up amongst businesses in the UK of customer relationship management systems, CRM. Can you give us a bit of a flavour of the role that customer relationship management systems have to play in the digital transformation of SMEs?
Sure. So first of all, thanks very much for inviting me, Andrew. I believe that CRM should play a critical role in any digital transformation program, whether it's SME or enterprise companies. So SMEs typically want the ability to scale and grow whilst keeping their operational costs down. So a robust cloud-based CRM application will help them manage their interactions with customers and prospects by streamlining their processes so that they can increase their sales, improve their customer service, and most importantly, increase profitability and productivity. So those are some of the reasons.
And on a basic level, I suppose a lot of businesses, before they invest in a CRM, might be using contacts within Outlook or perhaps Excel, sort of databases, just to try and keep tabs on who they're in touch with. When you work with a business for the first time, what's involved? Do you go to those Excel spreadsheets and help get them onto a CRM?
Sure. So what we do is we analyze the existing processes around sales, service, and marketing. And as you mentioned, most of the companies, especially small companies, use Excel spreadsheets, or they have a small Access database. In some instances, I've also seen Post-it notes being used, which is then collated at the end of the day. So we've seen all sorts. So what we do is we look at their current process, try and understand what outcome they want to achieve, and then map that to what the CRM system can do for them more efficiently, hopefully. Otherwise, why bother?
So if I'm an Ealing business owner and thinking about investing in a CRM for the first time, I suspect I might go to Google and plug in CRM, small business, and from my own sort of mystery shopping, as well as Salesforce, which I think you're going to tell us a little bit more about shortly, which from my recollection is typically can come in at about £85 per month per user. There are lower cost options. So for example, Zoho CRM coming in at sort of more like £10 per month per user. What do you think the sort of key considerations should be for small businesses in weighing up some of those lower cost versus perhaps more medium priced options?
Sure. So, I don't have, personally, I don't have any experience with Zoho CRM, but I can speak about my experience of implementing Salesforce CRM. But some of these considerations apply to any sort of CRM application that you're implementing, including Microsoft Dynamics, which is another option you can consider. So I think the first thing to do, one of the first considerations should be, before you start a CRM project, is to create a roadmap. You need to have a vision and strategy document which highlights your values, your goals, and your priorities. This is very important because it will help you plan your implementation in a structured fashion. Because the CRM has several components. You have the sales, service, and marketing, as I mentioned, and without a vision document outlining your company's priorities, it's not easy to focus your limited resources to work on the right things. The second thing is you need to identify the key stakeholders from both business and IT and give them ownership and accountability to implement the CRM system. One of the pro tips that I can give here is that you can create a center of excellence, even if you're a small company, that's responsible for creating a sturdy governance program for your CRM implementation. Let your business and enterprise architecture drive your CRM implementation rather than the other way around. And I've seen this in a lot of places where they allow the CRM implementation to drive their enterprise architecture, which is the wrong way of doing this. But again, going back to point number one, where we define the strategy and vision, the enterprise architecture needs to be aligned with your roadmap and in turn should advise your CRM architecture and data architecture. Possibly define a software development lifecycle and an operating model to build and extend your CRM application that is aligned with your current internal IT process. And if possible, have a bias for agile methodology over waterfall, because the CRM application today, whether it's Zoho, Salesforce, they come with no code or low code model, which allows you to build applications in a more rapid fashion. And finally, don't underestimate the value and effort involved in training in-house staff. So this should be a key consideration. A great implementation can still fail if you don't train the users to use the system as intended. So obsessively track user adoption and ensure that you're collecting the feedback to help users do their job more effectively.
There's some really, really interesting and some key points to consider there. But two bits of jargon that I'm going to ask you to unpack for viewers. The first was that you talked about architecture. Now, I know we're not talking about building houses here. What's architecture when it comes to a CRM system?
So the kind of, it's software architecture. So when I say architecture, I mean software architecture. An architecture is like, it's very similar to a building architecture, but instead of thinking about the pillars or the foundation or the doors of the houses, you're thinking in terms of the different components that keep your software running. So you need to think about different things like what will your core component will be, whether it's a billing system, whether it's a sales system, or what your product will be on your website. So you need to create an enterprise architecture that gives you a view, an overall view of what your different software artifacts are and how they're connected and how the data flows between these. If you don't know that, it will be very difficult to implement a new system where you might end up duplicating some of that effort or end up creating more work for yourself after you've implemented. But if you have...
That's really helpful. That's really helpful. Makes much more sense now. The other question I had for you was, you talked about agile development. Can you help us better understand how agile applies with developing CRM systems?
Yeah, so the best way to explain agile is to contrast it with the typical waterfall model, as it's called. So in the past, if you want to develop a software system, what you would do is you would first collect the requirements from the user, spend some time designing the system, and then after that you would do the build work, and then it goes live when the users start using. The flaw with this approach is that it could take the time it takes from gathering requirements to building the finished product can be large. So it could take up to 6 months to a year, sometimes 2 years. And in that time, the requirements change, business needs change. And also once the user starts testing the system, when they get feedback, when they can provide some valuable feedback, which is difficult to incorporate at a later stage. So in order to fix the problems in that process, Agile was created or invented. And what Agile says is that try and focus on smaller features and iterate on those. So try and focus on your most try and creating a most valuable product, which is a set of smaller features that you can deliver within a week or 2 weeks or even a month, and then iterate on it. That way you can get more realistic feedback from users that allows you to build a system that the users want to use. And you also don't waste time building something or testing something that's not going to be used.
That's really, really helpful. Now, in your earlier reflections, you were stressing the importance of businesses developing a sort of internal centre of excellence. Now, I'd imagine with some of the CRM tools that are out there, for example, Salesforce, if you sort of buy it off the shelf, you do get some basic functionality that's sort of ready to go. To what extent do you think a small business with in-house expertise might just be able to get started with something like Salesforce? And to what extent do you think budget needs to be set aside potentially to bring in an external sort of expert developer to customize?
Again, I speak from experience building Salesforce applications. Salesforce have created a CRM application that allows a business user who's never had any development experience to take the platform and extend and configure it using point and click tools. That's their terminology. Now, what that means is that if you have a in-house business analyst or even someone from the business who is not afraid of adopting a new platform, they can just go in there, understand the system. There are lots of resources to understand Salesforce as a platform and how to configure it. They can easily do things like adding a new field, creating a new layout, or even adding a simple business processes that can get them going initially. So a typical implementation involves buying a Salesforce platform, extending it, and then when it comes to complex logic, at that point, you probably start thinking about hiring a developer or an architect to help you extend your implementation. Having said that, I think it's always ideal, even for a small business, to have an in-house, again, I'm going back to the architect or a senior IT person, ideally with relevant platform experience like Salesforce or Zoho, because then they can create a technical roadmap that allows you to implement, extend the platform in a way that doesn't add technical debt to your, and again, by technical debt, I mean that you don't end up making changes which will make it harder for the platform to change over time.
Pim, I think you might have a second question that's been emailed in from viewers, perhaps for Anup.
Yes. Hi, Anup. What have you found are the main challenges for SMEs adopting CRM systems, and how can these best be overcome?
That's a very good question. So some of the things that I've found is, so the first thing that I've seen almost everywhere is the lack of focus. So it's very easy to treat a CRM system, because it's an internal system, as a second-class citizen in your enterprise strategy, and this leads to to lack of structured development of features on the platform. It also leads to technical debt, which I referred to earlier, that makes making changes to the system harder over time. The second thing is the lack of top-down leadership or ownership of CRM projects, because CRM projects usually start small and then they grow over time, because you can imagine, once you have a CRM system in place, you use it for sales, you use it for managing customer service, you'd use it for marketing, and nowadays you can also use it for e-commerce. So over time, the data and the functionality grows, but it doesn't grow in an organic fashion. Sometimes it grows in a haphazard fashion because there is no top-down leadership in managing those changes. And that's where, setting up a COE, my pro tip earlier in the segment, is very, very useful. The third challenge is lack of budget for CRM project. And it's related to the lack of focus and lack of leadership. It's easy to defund internal CRM projects. This, I believe, this is a mistake. CRM will be a nucleus of your operations, and is a key factor in scaling your company's growth. So it should be a key part of your strategy, and therefore should be allocated the right kind of funding.
That it's been absolutely fascinating. I may have to confess that I'm a bit of a CRM geek, so I could never get enough of this stuff. But I'm now going to turn to Yogesh from Everglade to tell us a bit more about Everglade's journey in implementing enterprise resource planning systems. So another bit of jargon of the day, ERP. So a business has put in place an active program of social media. They've established a CRM system, and the conversation internally then turns to enterprise resource planning, ERP. At their most basic, this could be a local business in Ealing using Xero for their accounts, or a tool like Asana for project management, as we do at West London Business. But clearly, Yogesh at Everglade, you're a larger business. That's a larger end of the SME spectrum, and you've matured beyond these sort of basic ERP tools. Can you give us a bit of a flavour to start with of the history of the business and the technology that you're utilising on a daily basis?
Sure. So Everglade is a family-run business. We started about 40 years ago. So we're very much West London born and bred. and we started in Hendon in our first factory. So you can see in the black and white picture there, that was the first factory about 40 years ago. And organically, we've grown over the years. You can see in some of the pictures, there's some very old monitors, like the massive screens. But in those days, it was quite revolutionary to have, computers and networks and stuff like that. But as a business, we've always had the philosophy of investing in technology and machinery. So today, we're based in Perryville, and we've continued to invest in our sort of software and technology over the years.
You've clearly never run away from technology. I think it looked like some of those sort of early IBM desktops in the photo that we brought up there, which is certainly a trip down memory lane. Now, I think shortly you're going to tell us a bit more about sort of the Microsoft Dynamics enterprise resource planning system that you've invested in recent years. But can you give us a flavour of what came before ERP and Microsoft Dynamics for Everglade?
We used to have our own in-house developed system, so it was quite basic in what it could do. And as the business started to grow, like the weaknesses of having that system became very apparent. And it was also very difficult because it was designed by in-house technicians for us to, make changes to it, customize it. And technology in IT and software changes very quickly. So we found it was really difficult for us to keep up to date with things. And that's why we decided to look for an off-the-shelf application, which we could do a slight level of customization to as well.
And I mean, it's a pretty complex business that you're running. I think we're going to bring up a photo of you on the factory floor to sort of bring alive what the environment looks like. Do you want to talk us through the plant machines that we can see?
Sure. We've got 2 factories in Perryville, and we've invested a lot in machinery. So within our industry, we've got one of the most state-of-the-art production facilities, and also the machinery that we have is amongst some of the most advanced in the country. But this means that our factory is very advanced, and we felt like we'd probably underinvested in our office technology and in the software. So we wanted to make things a lot more leaner and efficient in the pre-fabrication stage of our manufacturing process.
And presumably, when you got to that sort of realization that you needed to invest more in your back office sort of IT systems, there are different options out there. I suppose alongside Microsoft Dynamics, we hear about the SAP tool being mentioned in a lot of conversations with local businesses. I think we're going to bring up on screen some images shortly of your cloud ordering system, which I imagine is linked to all of this. But can you help us? Just understand the sort of thought processes that you went through as you weighed up one ERP system against another.
Sure. We did look at several different options, and then we got demos of each of them. And then as a board team, we sat down and reviewed, each of the options on the table. But we decided that the Microsoft package would be the best for us, just because of the strength of the brand and the work. There were existing players within our industry who we knew were using, the same software. So we knew that it could be customized to work towards our business as well. And we also found that it offered us an end-to-end solution. So right through from the point of a customer getting a price from us, a quote, through to being turned into an order, to going through onto the factory floor, to stock deductions, and then finally to invoicing and then reconciling from the financial side. So we found that it would be right through from the initial stages of an order right through to the end. And then in addition to that, we also found that it had features which could link into reporting modules. And I think that was also a really big part of our decision making, because prior to this investment, we found it was very difficult for us to get real-time management information, things like information on stock, trends in sales, colors, different things that customers were doing. So that was really essential for us to have that information at our fingertips.
So we've just brought up on the screen a sort of visual of your cloud ordering system, but I think we're now going to bring up a summary of some of the benefits of that aspect of your IT investment. Do you want to just talk us through the highlights?
Sure. So the cloud ordering system is part of our internal system, and this links to our Microsoft solution as well. But it allows us to offer our customers the ability to go to a web page, and then they can get prices for windows with all different styles and options, different colors, different product choices. And once they're happy with that, they can then send the order through to us, and then we can download that order on our end and directly send it to our machines. And the system has all been set up so that the machines can pick up the settings for where specific machining operations should be done. So it's very advanced. It links through to the manufacturing side of the business, but it's also very user-friendly and gives our regular trade customers the ability to quote and order from us 24/7. And it's really cut down the bureaucracy of going back and forth, emailing, phoning. So we find that it's a lot easier in terms of the customer user experience, and also from the business's point of view, very, very efficient. And it's fantastic in that it links through to the manufacturing and to the production machinery as well.
And I'm sure not a small investment putting any of these tools in place, but do you find you recover that investment relatively quickly?
So the upfront cost was one side of things, but we found that the time and effort required was, incredible. It was a, big investment in terms of our time and resources. So what you're seeing is the culmination of several years of hard work. So it probably took us about 5 years of investment and time to get to the endpoint at which we are at today. And a lot of it has been a journey as the technology has been changing. So the cloud-based system we have today originally started off as an actual software which customers would log into remotely. But as technology's changed, then we've been able to adapt and change, with the times.
And obviously, recent months have seen COVID-19 strike. Has this platform allowed you and your team to sort of work remotely when required?
It has. It was an absolute godsend during the lockdown. We closed the business for a month or so, and during the period that we were closed, our customers were still able to get pricing from us, still order from us. And with our internal staff, they were able to continue to pick up emails, respond to customer queries, and then also give pricing and process orders. And because we were able to do this, we found that when we eventually did reopen, we were able to hit the ground running, and there was lots of work already in the pipeline ready for production. So when we called in the staff, there was enough work to keep the team going. And we were able to engage with our customers throughout the lockdown period.
Now, all of this data going in obviously gives you a huge kind of sort of data lake that you can then sort of mine for information. And understand that you're doing that using another Microsoft product called Power BI. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Sure. So this is something we came across a couple of years back. And we found it was perfect for us because we're already using a lot of the Microsoft product suite. And this connects in directly to our database that we use with the Navision software. And it allows us to develop reports based on, customer trends, like ordering, different colors. So we can identify all sorts of clever things. And this allows us to then target customers who are not buying a particular product range of ours, so existing customers, and also to look at things like stock. So we offer a lot of color options, but there's always changes in the trends. So through this reporting system, we're able to identify where a particular color is becoming very popular in a particular product range, and because of this, we can manage our stock, and that means we can offer better customer service and faster turnaround times. And all of this information is available 24/7 on mobile devices, tablets. So it's very easy for the sales team and management to have all of this information.
And bringing us full circle, to the start of our conversation. All of this, from what I understand, comes together in, is it Navision? Your Microsoft Dynamics implementation.
Yeah,
I think
right.
we've got some screenshots of that for you to talk to.
Sure. So it all links into the Navision software, and again, at the moment this is a standalone software, but we're working to upgrade this to be in the cloud as well. So once we've done that, we'll have all of our key softwares in the cloud and be able to fully function remotely. But the screenshot you're seeing here is of Navision, and how we begin an order, and then we can put it through the system and run it through from the factory out to invoicing as well. So the software gives us like stock management, the CRM side, customer information, customer databases. Currently, we can access it remotely, but as I said, we're working on putting this into the cloud as well. And because we're going to be putting it into the cloud, we're going to be getting regular updates of the software as new features are introduced. And this is fantastic, because as technology changes and the software is improved, we can automatically get these updates and benefit from all of the changes.
Yogesh, thank you so much for talking us through all of that. I'm going to turn once again to my colleague Pim to see whether we've got any questions that have come in by email. Pim.
Yogesh, what kind of in-house training has using these IT systems required for your staff, and how challenging has this been?
For the training that we've provided, we've tended to use the software suppliers. So in the case of Navision, we called in a Microsoft Gold partner that then gave training to our staff on site. And from the initial stages of the project, the staff were involved in terms of giving their ideas and input as to how we could function with the software. So I think the transition to when we went live was quite easy, because all of the key staff members were involved from the outset. But we did find there was quite a lot of change involved in terms of how the software works, and we had to adapt and change our processes quite significantly in response to this. So I would say it took us about a year to fully settle in and come to terms with how the software works and iron out any minor issues. So there was a significant amount of staff time and effort involved with the implementation.
Our time is unfortunately up. An hour and a bit always flies by too quickly, but we've covered an enormous amount of ground today, from the context in which we're all working, a hugely challenging context, through to social media, CRM systems, and of course, finally, our conversation around enterprise resource planning, and the many considerations that go into getting an ERP system in place. Indeed, in Everglade's case, a 5-year journey. Thank you to the production team, Joel at Revolution Audio, as well as Pim, Barney and Adam at West London Business. Thank you to all my guests, Zav Anderson, Digital Skills Director at ClockworkCity, Yogesh Gopal, Managing Director of Everglade Windows, Anup Jadhav, Salesforce Technical Architect at Predictive Insight, John Martin of John Martin Estates, as well as Carol Sam, Business Growth and Inward Investment Manager at Ealing Council. If you need information and guidance on how to navigate these difficult times, please visit ealing.gov.uk/coronavirus business. If you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, please click on the button below the video stream to stay informed and show your support for our work. Thank you for watching today, and as always, we wish you, your friends, family and colleagues good health. Please maintain social distancing wherever possible to stay safe.